MPN's Power Player is sponsored by ZDMS Dealer Management System, the heart of technology in your dealership and the engine that drives productivity and profitability. Schedule a demo today at zdms.com.
Hey guys, Evan Laux here for Motorcycle and Powersports News. As you can see, we're back in the studio for another Power Players episode. And today, joining me, we have Steve Christini of Christini All-Wheel Drive. He's designed some really cool electric vehicles, some all-wheel drive vehicles, both for commercial use and military use. So we're going to be talking about all those things today. Steve, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And you know, Steve, before we get too far into all the different, companies you operate and products you manufacture, why don't you kind of give the people a quick spiel of how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, it's a long story. We've been doing it about 23 years, actually. So the technology we first started with was all-wheel drive tech for mountain bikes. So it was a design project way back in school, and we got some patents that helped us kind of get going. And then we started a mountain bike company. We first had our production years in 2001, which is over 20 years ago, so a long time ago. So we started as a mountain bike company. This is long before e-bikes and all those things, and that evolved shortly thereafter in the early 2000s into all-wheel drive motorcycle technology. So that was a variation of the initial tech. And what we do is really unique. A lot of people hear the thing about all-wheel drive. Why do we call it all-wheel drive? There's only two wheels. Mm-hmm. We developed a drive system technology internal to the frame of both the bicycle and the motorcycles. And it's a traction control system. It's really active traction control. So the basic tech of it is that if a rear wheel slips on a motorcycle or a bike, you lose your forward momentum, and especially if you're hill climbing, and everybody who's ridden a dirt bike, and like, you're stuck, you got to get off. What our system does is it senses traction loss, transfers power, pulls it forward, and then releases, and then it basically goes back to rear wheel drive. So it becomes very efficient. So that's what launched us into the moto side of things, and that was in the mid-2000s. And from there, we did initially conversion kits for Hondas and KTM bikes initially. We did some other brands like Kawasaki and others. And then in the early 2000s, we launched our own brand, which was just Christini. So that's where we are today with that. We still have our full lineup of off-road motorcycles with all-wheel drive. We have our full lineup of bicycles, both pedal and e-bikes now. And as you mentioned, we've really branched off because of the military relationship that we have established, and we can talk about, into electric vehicles in general, both hybrid and ATVs and soon hybrid side-by-sides. So that's a quick background. There's a lot there, so we can talk about each of those.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to start with the bicycles and also on the moto side, what was kind of the revelation you had that made you want to design something like that, all-wheel drive drivetrain?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because there's always, we've had people say, oh, you developed a solution to a problem that doesn't exist, because people always perceive that their bikes, they already have all the traction they want. Well, the reality is bikes have, and motorcycles specifically off-road, have an excessive amount of traction loss. Mm-hmm. And you think you're going fast when you're sliding, and you are going fast, but you can be transferring that power into momentum, but it's not about going fast, it's about control and traction. And traction control that's on a motorcycle these days is really more of basically an electronic system that retards the engine, slows it down so the wheel can regain traction. Well, if you can transfer that power into forward momentum, then you're not losing power. So the concept when we first started was kind of the same. It was really started with a mountain bike, trying to go up a hill, losing traction, and really losing your forward momentum. And that's what kind of jumped that into my head. The story, which is kind of an interesting, the drivetrain itself evolved from tail rotor technology from helicopters. It was really a hobby back then, but we actually used the engineer that helped develop some of the Boeing Vertol drivetrain stuff. We're in Philadelphia. He was there. He helped assist us in our first drivetrain design. So we like to call it like helicopter technology in a motorcycle. So it was actually that guy who helped us design our original drive system, which is pretty cool.
And now, your relationship with the military, you're providing them with these all-wheel drive vehicles. Did they come to you and ask for a product like that, or did you approach them, and what was kind of the need there?
Yeah, so it was kind of a two-sided thing. We were discovered initially by a training group outside of Fort Bragg, and they've always used motorcycles in some capacity. The U.S. not as much as a lot of international groups, but they're always used mostly for patrol, some tactical operations. And they came to us and said, hey, you've got this two-wheel drive bike. At that time, we were doing on kits for Hondas 250s and 450s, and they were using some of those vehicles in their fleets. So they wanted to evaluate it. And one of the big benefits of our tech, and it's not sexy to talk about, it's not, most techs are like go faster or race, and our tech actually takes an average rider and steps them up. Okay. It makes their ability to do tactical, technical things a lot easier. And that's what they all evaluate in the military. They want to get from point A to point B in the safest, fastest way. And you can imagine a troop having an extra 100 pounds of pack, and they got to go up this wet, muddy hill, and all of a sudden they get stuck, and they're on a motorcycle. Well, you have two ways of getting up that hill, and it's usually going fast or just fighting it. And our bikes, what they did in their evaluation at Fort Bragg is they took stock bikes and ours side by side and did exactly that. If you get off our bike when it's stuck, you can actually billy goat it up a hill. In a normal dirt bike, it's unloaded, it just spins.
Right.
So it was really just a side-by-side test, and said, well, this is really valuable for the bulk of our guys. Maybe they know how to ride. Some are really good riders, some never rode before. They just all have to be on the same field. So that's what got us in that door. And that initially was kits. And then we did some initially for the Navy and Navy SEALs and Special Ops, which is tactical groups. And later the Air Force came to us, and they actually have 6 bases have their bikes, and they use them for patrol. There's some that were deployed overseas, and they're really air-based security. And what they use them for is the Special Ops for those groups really are security groups. So they may have 2 guys on patrol at night, and you can imagine back when we were in Afghanistan, they would maybe be on patrol up on a mountain, and they would just get up to where they had to get to and sit there with night vision or what have you. So it was kind of a combination of those tactical and then really just utilitarian use. So that's how we got into the military stuff.
Now, is something like that also something that a consumer market is interested in, the all-wheel drive and the hybrid engines on motorcycles?
Yeah, so when we first started doing the motorcycle side of things, initially, as I said, it was kits. And in about 2012, when we did our own brand, we realized there was a lot of skeptics as to, hey, is this really work? What's it do? How's it work? So we started doing some active racing to try to validate it for the consumer side. And we raced in Endurocross for 8 years, almost 10, X Games for 8. We did a lot of international stuff. And the first time we did the international, which is Erzberg, which is the extreme enduros, and the people in the off-road world know that. We showed up at the Erzberg Rodeo, and we beat KTM's 2 world champions with 2 guys that nobody had heard of.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, Kyle Redmond and Jeff Aaron.
What year did you say that was?
That was in 2008,
so
it was a while ago. And we actually were doing that on modified KTMs. We raced at the factory KTM with them. It was kind of a collaboration. We weren't part of KTM. We were just kind of evaluating things, and we did great. And people noticed because they said, well, this obviously has functionality, and there's some great videos showing how those bikes just could clear stuff. So that really put us on the validation, said, okay, there's a spot for this, and it really works amazing in extreme things, and then you can translate that into, muddy trail riding or utilitarian things. So that's what launched us into the consumer side, and we did, and having our own brand. So we have our off-road moto, our 450s, we have our dual sport, and what we're moving into now is we're starting to do some big wheel stuff, similar to what you'd have from like the TW side, like an all-around big wheel utility all-wheel drive motorcycle. But with the advancement into electric, there's obviously that next step, and that's where we're moving into the hybrid stuff. And that's really our next step, is to actually have an offering on a motorcycle side that'll take the variants that we did for the ATV and now the side-by-side with hybrid electric, in which we can talk about, but we're going to do that into a motorcycle platform. So we're going to have a full lineup of gas-specific motorcycles, both on-road, off-road, big wheel kind of utility type vehicles, which will, you could modern day Rokons, the hunter or outdoorsman will be interested in. And then a hybrid version will have off-boarding power. So think of it as like kind of the ultimate camping, hunting vehicle. You can go silent, you can charge your equipment, you can go off the grid for 4 or 5 days, repower your campsite. So we want to kind of encompass all the tech that we've been working on, both with the military and the consumer, and pull it all together.
So yeah, obviously that hybrid engine technology is something really interesting in the power sports space because it's not something we've seen a lot. And when you take into account, a hybrid car on the road, you don't have a lot of control over the motor when it switches between electric and gas. It's kind of up to the vehicle, but in your case, your engines are built a little differently. So tell us how that hybrid engine works and the control the rider has over the motor.
Yeah, there's a couple variants that we're working with, but the military helped us launch into this. This concept originally was to use hub motors on the ATVs and the side-by-sides, which we're working on now. And that technology is extremely silent. There's no drivetrain. You eliminate all the drivetrain, and that gives you a bunch of benefits. But two of the big benefits is there's less parts to break down. You've got a tremendous amount of power with no contacted parts, so when it rolls, it's super silent. So to the hunting side, you can literally hear birds chirping while you're riding this thing. It's so quiet, even quieter than an electric motorcycle or anything of that nature. But it opens up all this space for a huge battery in a hybrid power plant. And our system is unique in that you can run it as an electric ATV or UTV, but the drive system, the power plant, actually charges the battery. It's not an actual motor that's going to be driving the drivetrain. Right. So you can run all electric. You can switch it to all electric all the time and run it till it's dead. You can switch it to hybrid mode, auto hybrid mode, where it'll recharge automatically based on loading into the battery. And that's kind of what your cars do. They go back and forth, and you can see the little meters do that. Or you can do it as a charging station. I think it as a big tailgate generator, but it's much smaller and efficient. You could go to a site, run all day electric, and then just turn it on and recharge your battery. And because of the efficiencies of both, having a really very low friction drive system in a very high efficient genset, we can actually recharge our vehicles just on one stock tank of gas up to 3 times. So the range on our ATV is almost 250 miles with one gas tank. So you have a ton of power, you've got silent, you can recharge, you can offboard power, you have an inverter so you can plug in 110. And we're working on a system right now that you can actually plug it in and you can actually use it as a backup, much like what Ford has done with their F-150. You can plug it into your fuse panel if you have a power outage. So it becomes a mini mobile generator. So from a consumer standpoint, you can just open up the possibilities of what you could do. I mean, the range anxiety is gone because it gets more range than gas. It's quieter, it's got more power, and you can power a campsite. So you're kind of adding all these great things, and we kind of gelled it together to make it into one thing. Now we're going to do the same thing with our big wheel or hybrid moto version. It won't have that type of range, but it'll have more range than a stock electric motorcycle because you'll be able to go electric for a period of time, but you'll be going gas more often to charge that system.
Right. And range anxiety is kind of like the biggest detractor for not only automotive EVs but motorcycle EVs as well. Why haven't manufacturers attacked that hybrid segment yet to kind of delete that range anxiety, as you put it?
Yeah, there's a lot of I wish I had the exact answer to that. Wish I really knew, but there's a lot of speculation for a couple reasons. One, we're putting a lot of technology into one vehicle. And, when you look at the price of a gas, say ATV or a side-by-side right now, and then you add the electrics to it, you're paying a lot for the battery. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the approach that most of these companies have gone down, so they want to take the drivetrains that they've proven that are out there, they're already out there in the network, and just put an electric power plant on it. By doing that, they don't open themselves up to all the space that we've accomplished by putting a hub motor system in this. So I feel like it's an inherent design change that we've done that eliminates what legacy companies have done with drivetrains. And we said, let's rethink how we're doing this whole thing. And that just gives us a blank slate for the area. Now, we've got a lot of space we're taking up. And if we had to use a standard drivetrain with, transaxles and CVs and all that, we couldn't do all this stuff. So I think there's a technical differentiator. And I also believe that, we're also approaching it from a different standpoint. And part of it came out of our testing with the military. The military doesn't want all electric. They want the ability to go 20% electric, basically 20% of the time. They need to go silent for a short period of time. Right. But they're more interested in taking that power and being able to charge other stuff. So that kind of drove us in this direction, saying, what can we do to open that opportunity up and to provide that power for the military guys? So that's how we did that.
Definitely. And the one section we haven't covered yet is your all-wheel drive bicycles. We'll get to that in a second, in the second half of the video. But guys, before we do that, we know a lot of you are a part of the power sports industry, whether you're an enthusiast, a professional, you work at a dealership, or you own one. ZDMS is a dealer management solution that not only can improve the profitability, but the productivity of your business. Watch this to learn more.
As many of you know, taking physical inventory is something you do once, maybe twice a year, and sometimes you avoid it altogether. With large quantities of parts, accessories, chemicals, tires, and various other merchandise throughout your store, it's not a simple task to complete. There is a better solution. A solution that gives you the ability to cycle inventory counts anytime without disruption to your business. That solution? ZDMS RFID Physical Inventory. With RFID tags placed on inventory, you can cycle counts or conduct physical inventory with a RFID handheld scanner by simply pulling the trigger and walking around your dealership. RFID scanners do not require line of sight, so counters don't need to bend down under partitions, climb shelves, or position items to be visually seen to be counted in most cases. Contact your ZDMS representative to learn more about RFID physical inventory and how ZDMS is the only dealer management system in the power sports industry building the technology your dealership needs.
The one aspect we haven't hit yet of your business is the bicycles. And actually, that's where you got your start. So why don't you start telling us about how you, the specifications of your bicycles?
Yeah, so, we started long before the e-bikes became a popular thing. And so we have a whole lineup of basically the pedal bikes. But the e-bike has really taken our technology and really made it an application with all-wheel drive and traction. So the benefits we talked about in the motorcycle are amplified in the e-bike.
Right.
And our main sellers at this point are really going after the fat tire, the bigger wheel. We have a 4-inch and a 5-inch. So the 4-inch would be very similar to other bikes. People see the 5-inch is really wide. We sell quite a few up into Canada and snowy areas. I mean, literally they can be snowshoe bikes. But they also can pull trailers. We use a bigger motor than what you would see from a main branded mountain bike company. There's a lot of people are starting to see utility e-bikes show up for hunters. A lot of dealers are starting to carry e-bikes both for full suspension to cross over to the moto guys and the utility guys. And one of the things that people don't understand about them is they're really electric motorcycles in the sense that have a lower speed and a higher range. Mm-hmm. Our motors are so powerful that they're technically not classed in the e-bike classification. They're considered light-duty off-road motorcycles. And they have a long range. The range, depending on your battery, can be all electric. You can run just throttle, kind of like an electric motorcycle, anywhere from 20 to 30 miles range. Or you can do pedal assist, which will give you 40 to 50 to 60 miles, depending on what level you put. So again, it's up to the rider to choose what they want to do. But one of the big things from a utility standpoint is you can run them with a trailer and pull up to 350 pounds.
Wow. Okay.
And they really will haul. I mean, they will carry a person and that weight up hills. So it's like the military uses them too. We sell to the special forces, and we're going to be selling also to the dealer networks. So it's going to be a good product to go after that guy that says, okay, I want the last mile mobility, and you can can envision somebody that has an ATV or a side-by-side, and they put a bike rack on the back, and they go to point X, and they use that e-bike to go the last mile or two to their tree stand, dead silent, pull in a trailer. They can hang out there or explore or do what they need to, and then they can use that trailer to either carry things to or from. So there's a really good utility aspect of it, and we also have the e-bikes that'll fit into the category of more performance, long travel, full suspension, front suspension, the same thing that like a Specialized or Trek would have for a moto dealer.
And the word you kept using is utility, and there's kind of been a debate or almost even animosity the past couple of years about whether e-bikes are considered within the power sports industry, but the fact that there's so much utility in this vehicle means that it can be used for so many different things. And something I'm kind of curious about is, do you see like the divide of like e-bikes and motorcycles or electric motorcycles getting slimmer as the years go by?
Yeah, I think that the barriers, like you said, there's this whole animosity. Like it was always about range, and then now they're starting to see the range gets longer. But the e-bike gives you that utility thing, like, okay, if the battery dies, I got pedals, right? So there's the fun factor for sure when you're talking about somebody riding around the pits or doing a full suspension e-bike. But from the utility side, I believe that as people understand the full function of those and dealers understand how many people they can roll that into a financing package, or they can roll it in like a big purchase you're buying, all these vehicles together, they all have their place. And it's filling it. What e-bikes have done, at least from my perspective, they filled in that last gap, that last missing thing, which was always walking. Now, plenty of people want to keep walking, but there's always that variant where you're going to want to do it. Not to mention they're a ton of fun. And from a dealer perspective, there's just as much money to be made in selling an e-bike as there is in a higher end motorcycle. And even in lower end, there's a lot of functionality from the consumer, and it makes a lot of sense for dealers as well.
Now, where is, say in the U.S., where is this kind of thing? Obviously, it's going to sell most in, desert areas where there's woods, but could somebody in the city buy a bike like this and enjoy it?
No, we're based actually out of the East Coast in Philadelphia, so you see guys with delivery bikes all the time cruising around. They're like the lower end, like price point things. So e-bikes are just starting to take over. And I like to tell the statistic to give people a vision of where we potentially can go. Although Europe, the last few years, 90% of all new bicycle sales are e-bikes.
Really?
The U.S. just passed 1%.
Okay.
About a year or so ago, I believe. So, we also use bikes as recreation and they're more transportation overseas, but there's so much room for growth. I mean, if you're not in this, on this, in both urban, off-road, whatever variation. I mean, a lot of the e-bikes now that you even see are pretty high performance. They're going to replace commuter motorcycles. I mean, in general, if you don't have the range, I mean, they're just as fast, they're quiet, they're easy to go in your garage and plug in. I mean, those little, a lot of little bikes are going to start to be replaced by that as well. So
that makes sense that e-bikes are so popular in European countries because, bicycles are already more important than they are in the U.S. because things are closer together. They have more compact cities. Yeah. So I think, I guess with the EV bicycle side in the U.S., people are starting to kind of come to that realization that, I don't need a car to get to work or to go get groceries. If I got a bike that has even a 20-mile range, now I can go to the store.
Oh, yeah, and you're seeing a lot of these variations of the smaller wheel formats, fat tires, racks all over them, and they become really functional. The only barrier, in at least the urban situations in the U.S., a lot of cities aren't completely bike-friendly in the way for those. But again, if you have an e-bike and they have the speed to go with traffic, it changes that dynamics. Yeah. And it becomes actually, in a way, safer than riding on the bicycle path. If you can ride it as a bicycle or ride it as like a scooter or an e-motorcycle, you're opening up a lot of opportunity. So,
is there anything? I mean, you have a wide spread of products.
Yeah.
You're hitting those different markets in the power sports industry. Are there any other segments that you're going to hit, or take any of your vehicle segments and try different things in those areas?
Yeah, one thing that we didn't talk a lot about is our variant that's going to go into really the side-by-side UTV. That's going to be coming as well. And we have a lot of plans to try to take that tech, the hybrid tech, because ATVs have a great, they have a great footprint, and there's a lot of use for that. But as a market as a whole, there's more UTV side-by-side sold. And we really want to try to go after that utility side market. And we kind of envision the military is going to use them. They change them into a robotics system, autonomous system. They can go off and charge things. And one thing that we're excited about, we don't know when it's going to be available, but is going to be an autonomous walk-behind mode. And we're working on that with the Navy. And essentially what it's going to be is what we believe could be the ultimate hunting type vehicle, and that you would have, the vehicle could follow you at a period behind. Okay. So, we have that tech, obviously, we have self-driving cars and things. So it'll be a really quiet vehicle that you could actually use to load and just go out ahead, and it could follow behind you at a certain point. And the military has obvious reasons for that, but that's going to evolve from a military use into a consumer thing. So that's going to be probably first on our side-by-side platform. And right now we're doing kit systems. Eventually we want to try to work in a bigger format like that, but right now the ATVs and the side-by-sides will be how we started the motorcycle thing, which was a kit, moved into our own brand, and that's where we are right now. We're kind of kitting with the ATVs and side-by-sides, and that'll be our own brand at some point.
Right. I'm trying to imagine how that system would work at following behind you, because if you think of a Tesla with the cameras, it obviously can sense the cars and everything. But I got to imagine that would be difficult if you were in a open environment or wooded environment with grass and trees and everything.
So the initial variant, that's why I said it's yet to be determined how quickly it'll transition. But they're using it more as a system that'll be able to be a pack. They have a system now that's quite expensive that was developed by DOD, and what that does is it's really a mule, and they put a bunch of stuff on it. And it basically works on a GPS tether, meaning wherever you walk, it'll stay within a small variation of that exact footprint. Okay. So if you're going to go there and you walk into a tree, it's going to run into that tree. But if you're walking, and think more of a fire trail or a wide enough trail, if you're going something super tight, it's going to have issues, because it's going to be really a dumb GPS system that'll say, they were on this spot, we need to be on this spot. And the reason it'll work is because we use hub motors. So our machines can tank turn or zero turn. So they have the ability to move like a remote control car. And if you're off a little bit, they can adjust with some ease. Whereas if you were just doing a single electric motor and steering, you might have to back up to do that. And that becomes complex. But for us, it's like it can move around in a little crab turns and things like that. So there's stuff to be developed, but fortunately, one of the collaborations that we're working with the Navy, and we work on these things together, and the technology is already out there in the consumer. We're trying to gel it so they can use it in a less expensive, not top secret type way, and transition it into a commercial space that we can utilize for the general consumer.
Definitely. Well, Steve, you got a lot of projects you're working on. Is there anything else you'd like to share about, what you're working on, about Christini, or, any general things about the power sports industry for our audience?
I mean, I think I'd like just to end, but we've been around for a while. A lot of people might know us as all-wheel drive guys that make those crazy bikes. But we've had the bicycle lineup and the moto lineup, and we're really kind of relaunch all these platforms over the next 12 to 18 months, and we're going to have like a new opportunity for dealers and things. So we want to kind of get back into that, and I think that's where a lot of we've kind of been off the radar since we stopped racing, but we're really not going after that. We're going after the general consumer side for the off-road market, and it's going to be an opportunity for us to go back through the dealer networks and expand that. So that's really where we want to head.
Perfect.
So,
well,
hey,
Steve,
thanks so much.
Thanks for coming in. We're going to be following up on what you're doing these next 12 to 18 months. And guys, make sure you're checking out Christini. They got some really cool all-wheel drive motorcycles. They got ATVs with hub motors, e-bikes. They got all kinds of things. So check out them. And if you want more power sports content, make sure you're checking out MPN across social media, across YouTube, and across our website. Thanks for watching.